They sat him down at the gate, coffee steam curling past a flag rope, clinking softly in the wind. Security scoffed, their voices pressed flat against the tiled hall, mocking his old pilot's ID, as if it were nothing but paper fading in time. Still, when the major walked in, he offered no speech, only stood beside the veteran in silence, and the card itself turned heavier than any word. Quiet men leave echoes too, and this one still lingers. The morning light over the small-town airport was a soft wash of gray and gold, too early for most, except the travelers and the tired staff who kept the place running. The security lane hummed with its usual rhythm trays, clattering belts, unbuckling shoes, scraping on tile. He stood in line without a word, the kind of man who carried himself with quiet steadiness. His jacket was plain, his hair silvered at the edges, his shoulders straight, though time had weathered them. In his pocket, folded neat as always, rested the worn leather wallet that held his identification. When his turn came, he placed the wallet gently on the counter. The young guard flipped it open, eyes darting across the card. A grin spread across his face. "Sir, this ID looks like it's from the 1930s. The laugh carried bouncing off the sterile walls. Another guard leaned over, chuckling. "Yeah, you sure this thing still scans?" "Looks older than the scanner itself." But the veteran didn't answer. He simply exhaled a breath that seemed to steady the whole moment. His gaze dropped to the tiled floor, tracing the shine of wax that glimmered under fluorescent lights. A hush followed the laughter, not silence exactly, but that pause when a crowd waits to see what someone will do. A boy standing with his mother, a lane over, tilted his head, curious. His eyes caught the card, the faded lettering, the old insignia pressed into plastic that had long since dulled. He whispered, "Mom, is that real?" The guard rolled the ID between his fingers like a novelty token. "Never seen one like this. Guess he just likes the antique look." The veteran's hand reached forward, slow and steady. He took back the card, sliding it carefully into his wallet. His fingers lingered there as if the leather itself remembered more years than the guard could count. Next, the guard barked, still smirking, waving the line forward. He stepped through the scanner, the machine humming around him. The buzz of electronics mixed with the muffled announcements echoing from overhead flights, delayed flights boarding the rhythm of ordinary lives moving on. The boy's gaze hadn't moved. He watched the veteran walk ahead, silent, unbothered, or maybe too seasoned to show it. The boy's small hand tugged at his mother's sleeve. He didn't even say anything. She hushed him, but the question lingered in the air, like contrail lines fading slow in the sky. At the end of the lane, the veteran gathered his shoes, slipped them back on with deliberate care, and adjusted his jacket. No anger, no retort. Just quiet. A man who had heard worse, seen worse, and learned the power of saying nothing. The laughter had already faded into background noise, but the hush it left remained. The kind of hush that makes people glance twice, wondering if they'd missed something important. And the boy kept watching, eyes fixed not on the guard, but on the card he had glimpsed for a fleeting second, an old pilot's ID teased and doubted yet carried with the weight of a promise. Then the veteran walked on, his silence sharper than any reply. Fingers brushed the wallet again, steady as if touching a piece of memory too valuable to explain. The line moved, the beeps resumed, the day continued. Yet one child's curiosity and one man's silence hung in the air, a cliff that promised more to come. The bell above the diner door jingled with a tired cheer, the kind of sound that had welcomed truckers and townsfolk for decades. The veteran stepped inside, shoulders brushing the wooden frame polished by years of use. The room smelled of bacon grease and endless coffee of pie crust cooling behind the counter. He took a stool at the far end, setting his jacket carefully on the backrest. The waitress, a woman who had worked this shift longer than most could remember, slid a mug in front of him. "Same as always?" she asked. He nodded. "Black, nothing else." Steam curled up from the cup. He wrapped his hands around it, steady like it might anchor him. From a booth nearby, voices carried. "Did you see that scene at the airport?" one man asked, laughter riding under his words. Another snorted. "Yeah, poor old guy. Carrying an ID that probably expired before we were born." The veteran didn't turn his head. The diner's neon hum filled the pause, bright and constant. But at the counter across from him, the same boy from the airport sat with a paper straw wrapper crumpled in his hands. His eyes darted from the chatter to the man, then back again. The veteran sipped slowly, letting the steam blur his vision for a moment. A quiet ache rested in his chest, not new, not sharp, just familiar. The first man went on. "Oaks like him, they're irrelevant now. Can't even keep up with security scanners. Time's moved past them." The waitress gave them a look sharp enough to slice pie. "Drink your coffee or it'll get cold." They chuckled but quieted, focusing back on their plates. The boy leaned forward, whispering across the counter. "Was it really yours?" The veteran didn't answer. His eyes fixed on the rising steam, as though the question itself might dissolve in the heat. The boy pressed softer now. The card. It had wings on it. "Was it really yours?" A busboy dropped silverware into a tray, the clatter ringing louder than it should have. The silence stretched. Then the veteran set down his mug, slow, deliberate. He looked at the boy, not with annoyance, not with pride, just quiet recognition. A moment long enough to plant doubt in young eyes and stir curiosity deeper. The boy's mother called from the booth. "Finish your soda. We're leaving." He slipped off the stool, the sound of sneakers squeaking against linoleum. Still, his eyes lingered, unwilling to let go. The veteran lifted the mug again, the hum of neon filling the gap. He let the steam fog his glasses, briefly hiding what he chose not to say. And the boy kept watching him. The civic hall smelled faintly of old varnish and dust, the kind of place where generations had argued about zoning laws and choir funding. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the long table at the front was crowded with officials in pressed shirts, stacks of paper, and microphones that squealed when touched. He sat in the back jacket, folded neatly over his lap, the old wallet resting on top. The room buzzed with whispers until the chair cleared his throat. "Next item," the authority figure announced, rapping a gavel. "Concerns about veteran recognition in civic programs." A few heads turned. The veteran stood, his movements deliberate. He walked forward, each step echoing on the wooden floor. He placed the ID card on the table, the surface scarred with decades of signatures. "This," he said quietly, "is proof of service. It should count." The board members leaned in. One squinted at the card. Another shrugged. The chair scoffed. "Paper like that doesn't matter anymore. We have new databases, new systems. Your word is not policy." Still, the veteran's hand stayed on the card. A cough came from the gallery. Someone whispered, "He's wasting their time." The veteran looked at the plaque on the wall, names etched in brass, men who had once stood where he stood. His eyes lingered on the dates, on the spacing between letters. But he tried again, voice steady though soft. "This record is not expired. It represents years you can't erase." The chair cut him off louder this time. "Enough. We've moved on. We can't base policy on nostalgia." Another board member added, "We respect your history, sir, but we must be practical." The veteran fell silent. The air thickened with that peculiar tension when someone has been pushed aside in plain sight. From the back row, a young voice broke the hush. The same boy leaned toward his mother. Why won't they listen? She hushed him, though her eyes flickered toward the front. The veteran gathered the card, sliding it back into his wallet. His hand lingered there, steady. The chair looked down at his papers, dismissing the man with silence sharper than words. The gavel rapped again, and just like that, the matter was closed. Low whispers rolled across the hall, the kind that cut deeper than shouts. Old ways, someone muttered. He doesn't understand the times. He turned, walking slowly back to his seat. No one stopped him. No one thanked him. Only the shuffle of papers and the scrape of chairs filled the hall. He sat down, eyes once more finding the brass plaque. Silent, steady. The boy's gaze followed, unsettled by what he'd seen, a man offering proof dismissed without weight. The civic hall was louder this evening, filled with townsfolk squeezed onto wooden benches, the air stirred by ceiling fans that clicked with every rotation. Papers rustled in the front rows, and the board members shifted in their seats, preparing to reopen discussion. The gavel tapped a hollow sound that rang across the paneled room. The veteran stood again. His hand steady rested on the edge of the table where the ID lay in plain view. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The object itself spoke, carrying more years than anyone else in the room. The chair leaned forward, his expression tight. We've said this before. That card is outdated. It doesn't matter anymore. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some nodded with the authority, others frowned uneasy at the ease of dismissal. Then the sound of polished shoes echoed from the back of the hall. Deliberate. Heavy. The kind that carried weight not from volume but from history. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. A man in uniform, Major Rankins, moved down the aisle. His steps were measured, each one like a note in a slow, solemn march. He stopped beside the veteran without saying a word. The chair cleared his throat, faltering. Major, this isn't your... But the words withered. The major didn't speak. He didn't gesture. He simply stood, his presence aligning with the veteran. Silence gathered around them, thick and undeniable. The crowd shifted uneasily. Someone whispered, "Why isn't he talking?" Another hissed back, "Because he doesn't have to." The clock on the wall ticked, each second louder than the last. The hush grew until even the air vents seemed to pause. The veteran turned his head slightly, meeting the major's gaze. A nod passed between them, brief, steady, heavy with recognition. The authority figure tried again. "This is irregular protocol." The silence itself pressed against him. Protocol slammed him with silence, yet crowned him with respect. Whispers spread through the hall, no longer mocking. It's true. He was there. The card is real. A woman near the back clasped her hands together, eyes glistening. The young boy leaned forward in his seat, breath caught. He had never seen silence carry so much force. The chair's hand trembled against the gavel. He lowered it without a strike. Respect had shifted. No argument, no paper, no vote could alter the gravity of that moment. But the room itself seemed to breathe differently, now filled with a reverence that had been absent only minutes before. The veteran lifted the card, not to wave it, not to boast, but to hold it close. His wallet opened leather, creaking softly, and the card slid back inside. The act was slow, deliberate, sealing the moment like a signature written in silence. The major gave one final nod and turned, his footsteps echoing once more through the hall. No speech, no command, just presence, just alignment. The crowd remained hushed, staring at the empty space he left behind. The chair shuffled his papers, voice reduced to a whisper. Meeting adjourned. No gavel struck. No declaration needed. The hush lingered like incense in a church weighty and sacred, and the boy, eyes wide, whispered to himself, "Silence is proof." The church hall was full before the first note even rose. Wooden pews creaked under the weight of neighbors' coats, folded hymnals tucked beneath arms. The smell of old oak and candle wax lingered in the air, and the soft rustle of pages turned filled the silence before the choir began. At the front, pinned to the board beside the program sheets, was something unusual, the veteran's ID enlarged and framed. A quiet addition, no fanfare, no announcement. Just there as though it had always belonged. People paused to glance at it, some with recognition, some with new respect. The choir director raised her hands. "Number 217, she said warmly, "for all who served." The organ swelled and voices joined, layered and steady. From the third pew, the veteran sat with his hands folded, jacket buttoned neat. His eyes closed as the voices lifted the hymn, echoing off high beams that had heard generations sing. The boy leaned closer to his mother, whispering, "They finally see it." She hushed him gently, but a small smile tugged at her lips. Across the pews, whispers threaded through the hymn. "That's his card, isn't it? Didn't think they'd ever put it up there. Well, guess it mattered after all." But the veteran didn't speak. He breathed slow, listening as the sound filled the hall. The hymn rose, each verse stronger than the last. Sopranos carried high notes like threads of light bass voices, grounding them deep. The organ hummed beneath it all like a steady pulse. During the final chorus, the boy whispered again, louder this time, "That's for him." The veteran opened his eyes briefly, the stained glass above casting colored light across the wooden floor. He let the sound wash over him, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with the music. When the last note faded, a hush settled, thick and reverent. No applause, no chatter, just silence until the director lowered her hands and nodded. Then the room exhaled, pews creaking again as people shifted. The woman beside the veteran leaned in. "Beautiful service, wasn't it?" He gave a small nod. "Yes." The boy couldn't resist. "Guess they found the right sheet this time." His mother chuckled, covering her mouth. The humor warmed the heavy moment, lifting it just enough for breath to flow again. The veteran's lips curved just slightly. A rare smile. The director stepped forward. "This hymn," she said, her voice carrying, "was sung for all who carried us quietly. Some proofs aren't in databases. They're in lives lived faithfully." Heads turned toward the veteran. Not everyone stared, but enough that the recognition was clear. Respect given not in speeches, but in the echo of song. The ID on the board caught a shaft of colored light glowing faintly beneath the glass. The veteran closed his eyes once more. The hymn still lingered in his ears, even after the hall had moved on to the next number. Still, he sat steady, letting the sound rest within him, proof enough. The porch swing creaked in rhythm with the dawn, its chains old but steady. Morning light spread across the horizon in soft strokes of peach and gold. Birds called from telephone wires, their voices rising above the hush of a waking town. The veteran sat on one side of the swing, a mug of black coffee warming his hands. He breathed in the chill air, steady as always. Steam curled above the cup, twisting briefly, before vanishing into the early light. The boy stepped out onto the porch, sneakers squeaking on wood. He held himself with the hesitation of someone who had questions, but wasn't sure if they could be asked. His mother stayed inside, giving space without saying so. He shuffled closer. "Mr. May I sit?" The veteran nodded to the space beside him. The swing shifted as the boy settled, their shoulders angled toward the same horizon. For a while there was only the sound of creaking wood and mourning birds. Then the boy whispered, "I saw your card." In church. Everyone did. The veteran's hand moved slowly to his jacket. He pulled out the old wallet, the leather soft with years. From it he drew the ID edges, worn letters faded, yet steady in his hand. The boy's eyes widened. He reached out tentative, and the veteran placed the card gently into his palms. The boy held it in the morning light, watching the sun catch on the dull plastic. His breath caught as if he understood more than words could give him. He looked up. "Does it mean you're proud?" The veteran shook his head, lips curving faintly. "It means I served." The boy studied the card again. Silence hung between them, rich and full. The veteran set his mug down, the porch boards creaking. He leaned back, eyes on the sky brightening above the trees. "Some things are carried, not worn." The boy nodded slowly, as if the words themselves had weight. He tucked the card close to his chest, careful not to bend it. The veteran lifted his coffee again, steam rising in the slant of sunlight. Birds scattered briefly, then returned, their wings cutting against the morning. "Will they remember you now?" the boy asked softly. "They already have," the veteran said. "You saw it." The swing groaned gently beneath them. The boy's small hand rested on the card, the leather of his jacket brushing the veteran's sleeve. 2 generations, one silence shared. Inside, a kettle whistled faintly. The mother's shadow moved past the window, but she did not intrude. On the porch, the moment held a handoff, not of paper, but of memory. The sun climbed higher shadows, stretching long across the yard. The card caught the light once more, glowing faintly, before the boy slipped it carefully into his pocket. The veteran exhaled long and quiet. His eyes followed the horizon line, the day beginning, as it always had, but somehow different now. The porch creaked, the birds sang, and the silence between them said everything else. The porch swing creaked as dawn spread pale gold across the yard, steam rising from his coffee, while the boy cradled the old ID, its edges glowing in the morning light. Still, it wasn't ceremony that mattered, but kindness, the kind that leaves no headline, only a steady presence like a lamp left in a winter window, proof enough for those who come after. Then the hymn from yesterday seemed to echo faintly in memory, soft as wings, carrying with it the hush that had once turned a crowded hall into reverence. Quietly, the boy slipped the card into his pocket, while the veteran exhaled, steady as ever, and the plaque in town would hold his name, but the real ledger was already written here. Some things are carried, not worn.